So let's actually figure this out. No opinions, no biases, no tradition, just what's going on inside the plant. All right, first thing we need to talk about is this. When you say something tastes good, you're actually talking about two different things: taste and smell. And plants create those in completely different ways. That smell you get when you brush past basil or you snap a mint leaf in half, that's coming from terpenes. Terpenes are oils that the plant produces, and they're constantly evaporating into the air. That's why you can smell a plant without even eating it. Scientists call these compounds volatile, which just means they float away easily. If you've ever used essential oils, that is literally what they are. They're just concentrated plant terpenes. Now, yes, of course, you can taste these too, and that's why herbs hit so hard, but that's not the whole story. Because when you bite into a tomato, you're not just tasting oils, you're tasting sugars and acids and a whole mix of compounds that were built inside the plant. So the real question becomes, where do those come from? And this is where things start getting really interesting. Inside every plant, there are two different metabolic systems running at the same time. The first one is called primary metabolism. It's survival, photosynthesis, growth, respiration, basic function. This is where your nutrients will generally go. Your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, everything that keeps the plant alive. But here's the key. Primary metabolism, it doesn't make food taste amazing. It just keeps the plant functioning. The second system is called secondary metabolism, and that is where the flavor is created. Because when a plant has enough energy, not just enough to survive, but extra energy, it starts producing things like sugars, flavonoids, and terpenes. So then you might think, okay, if a plant is healthy, it has everything it needs, it's able to perform secondary metabolism and create all these beautiful flavors, then why would hydro ever taste any different than soil? Well, there are really two things still happening in soil that aren't really happening in your hydroponic garden: microbes and stress. Let's start with microbes. And I need to also make a quick note on genetics, because you can't take a bland store-bought tomato variety and expect it to taste amazing just because you grow it in hydro, or soil for that matter. Genetics set the ceiling. The system just helps you reach it. So genetics aside, we'll say we're growing the exact same plants in soil and in hydro. In hydroponics, the nutrients are already dissolved in the water. They're ready to be absorbed immediately. In soil, it's a lot more complicated. A lot of nutrients are actually locked up. They're attached to particles in the soil. So microbes, bacteria, and fungi, they help release those nutrients and make them available. I'll get a little more into that in a second. Now, this is where people jump to the conclusion. They go, okay, so soil must be adding the flavor. But here's the truth. Plants aren't eating soil. They're not absorbing dirt. They're not taking in bacteria. Plants only absorb nutrient ions, no matter what they're growing in, always. You could drop a fistful of mud into your hydroponic garden and the plant wouldn't eat any of the dirt particles. It would only go in and eat the nutrient ions, leaving behind the whole sludge of dirt in the water. So the idea that soil directly adds flavor, that's just not what's happening. But soil does create something different. And this part's actually really cool, because even though plants aren't eating the microbes, they are interacting with them. The roots release compounds into the soil, and then the microbes respond. Nutrients get cycled, released, and transformed in real time. It's a dynamic system, and it's constantly adjusting. Now, when you compare that to hydroponics, in hydro, everything's already available. All of the nutrients are just there, floating in the water, ready to go. No unlocking, no microbes required. This gallon of micronutrients contains all of the trace minerals that a plant could ever need for the most complex of flavors. The microbes, though, they manage to do something that's a bit magical. Think of them as tiny little chefs, and they unlock the rarest of ingredients and hand feed them to your plant. And this partnership, it actually creates some complex flavors that seem to be hard to replicate in hydroponics. Soil is alive and it's constantly shifting. Microbes change, nutrient availability changes, the whole system adapts. The second difference is stress, and this one actually matters a lot when it comes to flavor. Plants under moderate stress, they can produce more terpenes, more flavonoids, and stronger flavor compounds overall, because those compounds are actually part of the plant's defense system. They help them respond to their environment. Plants can actually change the flavor and the smell of their oils to either deter predators, to attract pollinators, or they can signal stress to surrounding plants and animals through their oils. And nature's full of stress. Wind, heat, weather changes, microbial pressure, it's all chaos. But these differences are actually very subtle. If you grow a plant properly in hydroponics and grow a plant properly in soil, these complex flavors would actually be pretty hard to pick out. It's like going from a chef preparing your meal to a perfectly stocked buffet. Everything's right there in hydroponics all the time, and because of that, the plant can run incredibly efficiently, which leads to something really important: more available energy for secondary metabolism, meaning more sugars, more flavor compounds, more consistency. So now we're back to the question, why do people still say hydro tastes bad? The number one way that you can mess up the flavor in your hydroponic garden is just by loading too many nutrients. And people do this thinking that it's the right thing to do. More nutrients, more growth. But it absolutely destroys the system. This comes down to something called osmosis. Water moves from lower concentration to higher concentration. Your nutrient solution is lower concentration, and inside of the root membrane is higher concentration. But if your nutrient solution gets too strong, then the plant's going to struggle to take in water. Nutrient uptake slows down, and the internal balance gets disrupted, which means that entire flavor factory, secondary metabolism, it slows down or shuts down completely. And the result? Bland food, bitter notes, weak texture. And now someone says, hydro tastes bad. But what actually happened was the plant was stressed because it was mismanaged. All right, so here's the real mic drop moment. The science says that it's microbes and the stress that slightly changes the flavor. And it's this slight, very subtle change in flavor that people are saying makes soil taste better. Well, those exact microbes, the bacteria and the fungi that assist in soil, you can actually add to a hydroponic garden too, and they do the exact same thing. Not only that, but they also simulate a little bit of stress to the plant, so the plant actually creates those more complex terpenes and flavor profiles too, just by adding these living bacteria and fungi to your hydroponic reservoir. Just keep in mind, if you do this, it's no longer a sterile environment, so you can't use hydrogen peroxide anymore. We want to make sure that there's no chlorine, there's no chloramine. So we're going from control in a sterile environment to wild, living, organic environment. I still prefer to stick with a sterile hydroponic environment. I don't invite living microbes into my garden because I've never grown anything in my garden and thought it didn't taste great. So I've never felt like I wanted to introduce microbes. I really like having the control, and I feel like that's part of the success of my particular personal hydroponic gardens. So let's pull back and look at the big picture, right? Microbes and stress can add to a more complex flavor bouquet. However, secondary metabolism is responsible for like 90% of the plant's flavor and texture. Because secondary metabolism is where the plant creates those extra sugars, the acids, terpenes, and the flavonoids. And those four things are the recipe for your plant's flavor. So if you want to add that subtle complexity that a little bit of stress and microbes introduce to soil plants, then just introduce the living microbes to your hydroponic garden. And here's the thing, I know all of these people aren't wrong in thinking that soil tastes better than hydroponics, or even that hydroponics taste bad. That's just been their experience. And I can't say that their experience is wrong at all. But most people have never had the product of a properly maintained hydroponic garden. What most people get is osmotically damaged, over-nitrated, bloated, and bland, and scientifically, that makes total sense. That's exactly what you'd get if you added too many nutrients to your hydroponic garden. Now, if you're the kind of person who is listening to this information and you find it intriguing and you're curious to see if this is something that maybe you could do, and you really want to see what a properly maintained hydroponic garden can produce, I encourage you to check out everything that I offer here for free at humblegrowthhydroponics.com. I have a ton of guides. I have a free book called the Hydro Gardener's Handbook. You can download that at humblegrowthhydroponics.com, and it has everything in it that you need to get started and have a successful hydroponic harvest. I already know what's possible in hydroponics. I've been growing hydroponically for years, and I've had incredible harvests with incredible flavor. So take advantage of all the resources I have, and let me know down in the comments below how your grow goes. I'm Chad from Humble Growth. Let's grow food, let's grow freedom, and let's grow smarter. See you in the next one.